Where am I? Ino Yamanaka slowly scanned the dark and damp place, confused about her whereabouts. She was sure her jutsu reached her target, but this place was different from the rest. In fact, it felt different.
Usually when she entered her target's mind, there were objects inside the mindscape that resembled the owner. Like for example, during her first Chunin exam when she entered Sakura's mind, the girl's mindscape was filled with an unhealthy obsession with Uchiha Sasuke. The rooms in there were decorated with his picture on every door and the color was just horrid. She never thought she would live to see pink doors. Even though the place was a mess, there was a warm feeling to it. Each person's mind is different. She understood that, but there was always that warm sense of feeling whenever she entered another person's mind. People claimed that the mind is a powerful weapon and a sacred place, and Ino knew that, but for the first time in her life, she encountered Naruto's mind, and it was completely different. She didn't know what to do in it. There were so many different paths that could lead to different places, and she couldn't help shake off the cold, eerie feeling that came with it. Sounds of water dripping echoed through the hollow hallways. "Great mess you got yourself into, Ino," she said as she started walking around. Her father always told her that if she entered a mind and got lost, just follow the memories. It was amazing how her father's words managed to stay with her to this day. Memories were kept hidden behind closed doors, a precautionary measurement devised by the brain so that it could store and process them easier. In Naruto's mind, that wasn't the problem. The problem was finding the right path to the right door. Left or right? She asked herself. Looking to her left, the hallway was filled with water while the right path was dry and sturdy. Deciding to take the dry path, she started walking slowly, taking her time to study her environment. When Ino took her fifth step into the right corridor, the floor suddenly gave out and she intuitively jumped off, barely making it back. Her eyes widened as she watched the entire right hallway disappear before her eyes. "Mental traps," she muttered as she picked herself up. Ino sighed as she turned back around, cringing as she thought about the left corridor, the only path left open to her. The nasty water and the dark place didn't exactly appeal to her, but she entered his mind for a reason. She wasn't going to back out now.
Why does Naruto have mental traps in his head? She wondered out loud. They weren't commonly used in a person's mind. Moreover, there were only a handful of people who could use them correctly, and if they could, they were most likely masters of the mind like her clan. Sucking in her pride as a woman, she entered the left corridor. Ino decided to take it slow, seeing as how the right corridor was booby-trapped, and if a person like herself were caught inside one of those, it would be the end for her. While she was just a spirit inside another person's mind, whatever damage she sustained in here will affect her physical body out there. Therefore, if she died in Naruto's mind, she would die out there.
Ino's eyes wandered around the area, grayish doors all over the area. This must be where his memories lie. The grayish doors reminded her of a depressing place, and it was then that she knew. Naruto wasn't the Kyuubi.
All her life, she was taught that the Kyuubi was a legendary demon who lived to torture and kill humans. She was taught that the Yondaime Hokage sacrificed his life to defeat the Kyuubi, so Konoha can live in peaceful times. She was taught that Uzumaki Naruto was a dangerous child, someone who she should stay away from. Being a good girl that she was, she obeyed her elders and stayed away from the child called Uzumaki Naruto. Her parents told her stories of what this Uzumaki Naruto was capable of, and it frightened her. Stories of mischief and dangerous adventures, it was enough to scare her to stay away. As she grew older, those stories caused her distancing of Uzumaki Naruto while they were still in the academy. Just by seeing the legendary child that her parents told her about, she made her own decisions and agreed with them. Seeing him day after day, wearing nothing but the same hideous orange jumpsuit, her opinions about him didn't change. Still, the same dangerous child.
Her opinions stayed the same as they grew older, only greeting him when it was deemed necessary. Not once did she question why everyone hated Naruto, and it didn't bother her much. The only thing she thought about was getting one Uchiha Sasuke for herself and competing with Sakura for everything. Clothes.
Reputation. Boys.
As she went up the ranks in her ninja career, she became distant acquaintances with Naruto. Sure, she had done missions with the man, but that was with a team only. She never went alone with him, and the council, including her father, saw to that. It was on that fateful day that she found out why Naruto was called the legendary child. It was on that day she found out why they all hated Naruto. The villagers called it the cleansing, seeing as how it was on that day Naruto's biggest secret was revealed to the entire village in his exile. She still remembered the words she said that day. The hateful words that entered her mind when Danzo announced the truth to everyone. Demon scum. Those two words that caused her to bring back up the memories of her childhood. The hatred that she learned from the older generation. It wasn't until a few months later when she soon regretted her actions.
Ino's hands trembled as they approached the first door. She didn't know if the door was another mind trap or some sort of repressed memory. Just when her trembling hands reached the doorknob, her body tensed, waiting for something to happen. When nothing happened, she released the breath she was holding in. As she slowly opened the door, a bright white light escaped from the room, blinding her in the process. She felt an invisible force surround her body as it sucked her in, the door quickly shutting itself from behind.
The bright light soon subdued after a while, temporarily distorting her vision. When it finally came back, she noticed that the environment was different. She wasn't in his mind anymore. She wasn't even sure where she was. Where am I now? She thought as she tried to get her bearings straight. It looked like a small area that vaguely resembled Konoha, but the area was different. She then saw a group of men with some torches coming towards her.
Great. Maybe they can help me. Just as she was about to speak, she noticed her arms rising, and it was then she noticed that she had some small arms. The next thing Ino knew, she was running for her life. She didn't know why, but the body ran away from the group, almost as if it was afraid of them. She tried to make it stop, but it wasn't listening. It just kept running and running until it ended in a blind alley. A dead end.
She could hear the heavy panting as the sounds of grown men appeared at the entrance of the alleyway. The men approached slowly with a hint of malicious intentions written across their face. Wait, stop, I'm Ino. She noticed that while she was thinking the words out, there was no sound coming out. No matter how hard she tried, nothing was coming out.
The demon finally got trapped. One of the men said, smirking as he cracked his knuckles. Let us make this slow and painful, Keno. Another man said.
Demon. It was then she realized that she was literally inside of Naruto. This was a memory and she was reliving it. This was a new experience for her. Whenever she saw another person's memory, she was usually in her own body, in control of her movements, but in here, she was stuck inside of Naruto's body. Please, a small broken voice cried out. No more. It had to be Naruto's, Ino assumed. Probably when he was younger.
Today, you die. The man's cold tone of voice sent shivers up Ino's spine. She could tell this man was serious, and she knew what they were going to do. It didn't take a genius like Shikamaru to figure out what he was about to do.
Every punch the man threw, every kick, every cut, every bruise the group inflicted upon Naruto, she felt it. She didn't know how, but she felt it. The cold hated glares that the group gave him, she felt it. When the group was finally done with him, the leader slammed Naruto against the wall before leaving him to drown in a pool of his own blood. Ino felt powerless as she heard the small whimpering sounds coming from Naruto. The tears of a bloody and beaten boy cried as he lay on the ground, unable to move. How she wanted to just leave this body and hold the young boy in her arms, telling him that she was so sorry.
Without warning, Ino felt something tugging on her body. The next thing she knew, she was forcefully ejected from the room, finding herself back in the cold and depressing hallway. Oh, Naruto, she muttered to herself as wrapped her arms around her body, hugging herself tightly. Those earlier images were still fresh in her mind, and it will probably be there for a while.
Ino looked further down the hallway, both sides of the wall filled with an endless supply of doors. They were probably childhood memories, and she shuddered at what the next door would hold. Whatever she experienced in there was more than enough to last her an entire lifetime. Should I just leave now or, no? Ino shook her head, disagreeing with those thoughts. I will continue on.
What do you mean the scrolls are gone? Tsunade screamed as a petrified Chunin trembled in fear. The goddamn Hokage slammed her fist against the wall of the restaurant, causing the entire thing to collapse from the sheer power emitted. Who the bloody hell took it? She yelled out. I don't ken no who Hokage-sama. Tsunade gritted her teeth as her eyes flared with anger. She was about to lash out again when Jiraiya quickly intervened. Hurry, we must go, the Toad Hermit stated, urgency detected in his voice. We must retrieve it before the intruder leaves the village. Where the hell do we start looking?
The Hokage Tower.
With a quick nod, Tsunade threw the Chunin aside, and the two disappeared from the restaurant. After exploring several other doors, Ino couldn't take it anymore. She was hating herself more and more as she witnessed more of Naruto's memories. Beatings and spiteful glares from villagers, ignorance and bullying from older children. It was enough to make her vomit from the disgusting things that she'd seen. Deciding to skip the next set of doors, she walked further down the path. Her original goal for coming into his mind was to confront him, and unfortunately she got more than she bargained for.
After skipping the next 30 doors or so, she found herself stopping at some random door. She didn't know what to expect, so she slowly opened the door, and just like the other doors, a bright white light blinded her as she felt herself being dragged inside. Instead of finding herself trapped in Naruto's body like the other times, she was floating in the sky. Ino glanced around the area. She wasn't in Konoha anymore, that much was certain. It looked more like the forest area, and she spied two statues by a waterfall. As she flew closer to get a closer look, her eyes widened in shock as she noticed the destruction surround the area. The ground was destroyed and parts of the statue was chipped and cracked.
Sasuke. That was Naruto's voice that screamed out the Uchiha's name. She quickly turned towards the direction to see what he was yelling about, and to her shock, she saw Naruto surrounded by an orange aura, which she deduced to be the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto! Sasuke snarled back as Ino turned her head in the other direction. She let out startled, gasped, as she saw Sasuke with huge claw-like wings on his back. But what's more was that his usual pale complexion was now dark and gray. Realization soon hit Ino as she looked up at the statues, recognizing them. Oh my god. This is the fight between Naruto and Sasuke during their younger days. This was the fight that Shikamaru told me about. The fight that occurred at the Valley of the End. Chidori. Rasengan. The roars of the two mighty techniques caused Ino to turn her attention back to the fight. She saw Naruto and Sasuke leaping into the air, the attacks glowing on each of their arms. Naruto. Ino screamed as she flew towards the fight, hoping to stop their battle in time. As she dashed towards them, she watched in horror as the final battle took place in front of her eyes. Sasuke Chidori went head-to-head with Naruto's Rasengan. The two techniques battled it out for dominance. She watched on helplessly as Sasuke's technique slowly overpowered Naruto's, a huge smirk on the Uchiha's face as he went in for the final push.
Oh my god. She clasped her hands to her mouth as Sasuke impaled the Chidori through Naruto's chest. Why Naruto? Why? She screamed out as tears dripped down from her face. While she was preoccupied, she missed the small words from Sasuke. Why Dobi?
Because I made a promise, Naruto responded. Ino looked up, seeing a smile on the blonde's face as blood dripped from his mouth. This has to be a fabrication of the truth. This has to be a lie, Ino yelled out. Sasuke never impaled his arm through Naruto's chest. The reports never stated that. Shikamaru never mentioned that part to me. What the hell is going on? Ino slammed her fist on the ground as Sasuke yanked his arm out. Naruto kept it to himself. He lied to us. The bastard lied to us. Rain soon began to fall from the heavens, almost a sign from the gods that they too were sad about this battle. Ino wept in silence as she watched Sasuke's Hitachi drop from his head, falling next to Naruto. Why? Ino asked before the familiar feeling engulfed her body, throwing her out of the memory once more. What the hell happened here, Kakashi? Tsunade immediately asked when she arrived at her office. The Godame Hokage expected to find her office still in one piece, but to her surprise, she was not only greeted with one surprise but two. The first surprise was that her office was no longer an office, and she now had a sky window the size of a one-room apartment. The second surprise was that 3 of Konoha's most respected members of the council were found dead in her office. You better tell me something, Kakashi, the woman threatened.
Kakashi shrugged his shoulders as he looked around. To be frank, Hokage-sama, whatever you see is whatever you get. Jiraiya chuckled as he folded his arms. He whistled at the amount of destruction that was laid before him. You had to admit, this was indeed a humorous thing. A quick glare from Tsunade silenced the man. He knew she was angry, but he just didn't know how pissed she was.
Who did this? Kakashi cringed at the question. That was one thing he didn't want to answer. Well, it was like this. Sakura? He quickly dragged Sakura into the picture, shoving her into Tsunade's face. Sakura will explain it. When we got to your office, Shishao, the place was already ruined and destroyed. Pakun detected a faint chakra trail that belonged to one Uzumaki Naruto. Sakura answered with disgust as she put emphasis on the name of the perpetrator. Naruto was here, Tsunade and Jiraiya both asked. What the hell was he doing here? She shrugged. There were bodies lying all over the hallway, all of them belonging to Ambu. My guess is that whatever he was here for, it had to be something big. Yes. Thank you for the report. But you're dismissed now, Sakura. Sakura bowed her head and left. Tsunade waited until Sakura disappeared before turning to Kakashi. Who else was involved? Uchiha Sasuke, the Synoptic ninja responded. His Sharingan was steadily analyzing the chakra residue left behind from the two fighters. Tsunade sighed. Go, fetch your former student Kakashi, and make sure he comes in escorted by Ambu. He doesn't leave the village. Do you hear me? Hi. Kakashi vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving a worried Tsunade alone on the rooftop. What does he want with the scroll? She asked. Jiraiya walked on over, putting his hand on her shoulder. They want one thing and one thing only: the destruction and salvation. After that last memory, Ino strolled around in the hallway, her thoughts occupied with Naruto. She couldn't understand how Naruto survived that encounter. From what she saw, it looked like Sasuke pierced through one of his lungs, and he walked away with a scratch. Did the QB provide some sort of advanced bloodline that made Naruto immune to death?
She didn't know the answer to that, but she did know one person who did. While she was in her own little world, she unconsciously walked past the next 20 doors. She figured one more memory wouldn't hurt, but knowing her luck so far, these were probably all painful memories for Naruto. She prepared herself as she opened another door, mentally shielding her eyes from the white lights. Once those lights died out, she looked around, wondering when and where she was. From her perspective, it looks like she was standing above that ramen stand that Naruto hangs around. She watched as Naruto sat there eating ramen, happily chatting away with the owner, but this Naruto was older. An explosion suddenly occurred, causing everything in the area to feel the aftershock. Ino's eyes widened when she realized that this memory took place just before the hospital explosion. She quickly looked down as Naruto tended to a fallen man and then looked up, seeing the building go up in flames. Naruto was innocent. Her words came out like a whisper. He was innocent. Those words kept repeating themselves in her mind. She couldn't believe it. Naruto was right. He didn't do it. Hey, get your hands off him. Naruto angrily shouted as he shoved several Anbu out of the way. She watched the interaction between Naruto and several Anbu, noticing that Naruto's eyes turned colder with each passing second. By the end of their conversation, his eyes showed no emotion, only a piercing stare that even made her flinch.
You don't deserve to be Anbu. Your captain would be crying right now. She heard him speak. Oh, that's right. Naruto was the Anbu captain, she thought. She winced as she watched how Naruto brutally dealt with the Anbu squad. Deciding that she had seen enough, she ejected herself from the memory, returning back to the hallway.
Her mind was still shaking from the information that she saw. She had enough information to prove that Naruto didn't commit the crime, but just how was she going to convince Naruto to come back? Hell, he was probably angry that she invaded his mind. She shivered to think about what he would do her if he ever found out. What do you mean you can't tell me anything, you blasted furball? An angry voice shouted as the echo reached Ino's ears. There shouldn't be anyone else in here but her. It would be dangerous for two mind walkers to enter one mind at once. Naruto could suffer some permanent damage to his mind if the person decided to take his revenge on him. Walking as quietly as she could through the hallway, she found herself at the entrance to a huge room. As she leaned forward, she could only see the back of the man's head, his cloak blocking everything. I want to know what the hell is going on. This is my body if you don't remember. The man said.
Quiet, you stupid whelp. This may be your body, but I am the Lord of the Demons. Do not forget your place. A deep voice roared back. The man sighed as he folded his arms. A deep chuckle was heard simultaneously. Come out, Yamanaka.
Come out, Mind Walker.
Her heart jumped a few stories when the two voices called out her name. They knew she was there. Ino thought about her options here. She could go out there and face the music, or they could come to her and kill her. Deciding that the first choice was probably the best choice, she slowly walked out, determined to let this man know that she was in charge. Who the hell are? Ino stopped in the middle of her question when the man turned around, an annoyed expression on his face. Naruto. Did you have fun going through my memories? Naruto coldly asked. I certainly didn't. Ino remained speechless, unsure about what to say to this man. He wasn't even supposed to be here. It was only supposed to be her walking through his mind at her own pace, but somehow, her plans always got messed up. Before she knew it, she found herself being slammed into the wall, opposite of the cage. I will give you to the count of 3 to get out of here, Ino. You invaded my privacy and saw some very personal memories. Be lucky that I don't feed you to him. Him? Ino asked. Sure, she could have asked some other better questions, but due to the uniqueness of her situation, that was the only thing she could get out. Naruto pointed his finger towards the cage. QB. For the first time, whelp, you're finally making sense. Feed her to me. I can't wait to taste another mind walker. Ino hastily shook her head, disagreeing with the whole idea. She reached up and tried to break free of Naruto's iron grip, but his hold over her was strong. Please, Naruto. I can explain, I hope. She could see his cold eyes staring into her, as if he was waiting the decision. Fine, he slowly replied. But if I don't like your answer, I'm feeding you to QB. Ino gulped as Naruto released her. She watched as he retreated back to the other side, leaning in front of the cage. She saw the huge, devious smile on the demon's face as it appeared by the bars. Well, just for the record, I'm not here to kill you or anything. That earned a snort from Naruto. I just want your forgiveness. That's it? You come all the way here just so you can ask that. Are you stupid? He shot back. Do I look like some kind of church? I can't even set foot into a goddamn church. I know what we did to you were wrong, Ino pleaded. Wrong? Wrong? You pitiful fools. Do not even know the first mistake of being wrong. Naruto shook his head in disappointment. Talking with her was bringing back bad memories. I'm sure you saw my memories. Those daily beatings. Those daily harassments. Did I once take revenge? He dryly asked. He wanted her to take a guess. He wanted her to understand one thing while she was here. He wanted her to understand that there was no way in hell he was going to forgive them. No, Ino quietly mumbled.
That's right, no. I never once fought back. I never once thought of getting revenge, and do you know why?
Again, the girl shook her head. Because I thought they would change. I thought for sure they would at least acknowledge me when I became a ninja. But what did I know? These were ignorant people who were incapable of change. I even declared myself to become the next Hokage in order for them to like me, but look at where that got me. A freaking chase around the village by several Anbu.
At this point, Naruto chuckled. This village has lived to its peak of existence. There is nothing more for it but destruction. I will be the one to bring judgment to this village. Judgment. Was Naruto seriously talking about revenge here? What happened to the boy who wanted to become Hokage? Ino felt helpless as she stared at the man standing before her. His cold piercing eyes, his chiseling face and his twisted logic. As much as Konoha meant to her, she couldn't let it fall to the grounds. Wait, Naruto, I'm sure there's a better way. Maybe. No, the man sharply replied. Nothing they do or say will change my mind. They can all bow to me and it still wouldn't matter. All that matters is revenge. Okay, that was it. Ino had enough of him going emotional on her. He was reminding her too much of Sasuke. She watched as Naruto continued on, ranting about how he was going to destroy the village and everyone in it until she had enough and just slapped him across the face, shocked expressions showing up on both of their faces. What the hell was that, Yamanaka?
She really couldn't find anything to tell him. Hell, she didn't even know why she slapped him. Sorry. Ino apologized. You reminded me of Sasuke. Naruto raised an eyebrow, now interested at her analysis. I remind you of Sasuke, that self-centered egoistical son of a bitch teeny. Well, you did for a second. Even for a ninja of his caliber, Naruto took a second to massage his swollen cheek. No matter how strong a woman was, a slap was a slap, and it stung like hell. He sighed as his thoughts reflected back to their earlier conversation. Maybe I did overact a bit, he muttered to himself.
He casually glanced at Ino, whose attention was now focused at Kyuubi. She didn't look scared of the beast. In fact, she wasn't even intimidated. She had a look of curiosity in her eyes, like a 6-year-old girl who wandered into a room full of books. Maybe she was different from the rest, different from them. Yamanaka, Naruto called out. Hearing her name, Ino stuck her tongue out at Kyuubi, infuriating the beast some more before turning around towards Naruto. Get out of my mind and disappear.
Disappear.
There will come a time where I will see you again, and when that time comes, I will not hesitate to kill you.
But
I wasn't done, Naruto replied, holding his hand up. If you were to disappear from Konoha and prove to me that you actually want to seek my forgiveness, I will reconsider your offer.
Ino curiously started walking around Naruto, circling him as she was inspecting something. I don't know. Naruto stood there, his eyes following her meaningless actions. What are you doing, Yamanaka?
Ino held a finger to her chin while she continued circling Naruto. I still don't know why you saved me, Naruto. You remember that day, right? You saved me from Sasuke and released me as prisoner. I'm just curious to know why you did that. I needed a hostage, and as much as I hated Sakura, I did not want her as a hostage. Kill her maybe, but hostage no. Are you sure there's nothing more? Ino asked. If she worked her charm right, maybe she can get deeper into Naruto's head, see what makes him tick. The handsome man standing in front of her was just a mystery, unknown to the world. Are you sure you didn't just save me to keep me for yourself? Her question caught Naruto off guard. She knew it, and she could see that he knew it too. Score 1 for womankind. She smiled secretly as she awaited his answer. I saw that killing you would have no effect on Konoha. Killing someone like Sasuke or Sakura might have an impact, but you, on the other hand, do not have the worth needed to impact Konoha. The man replied. Ino's eyes went up in flames as she took his words to heart. What did? Watching the man in front of her smirk, she calmed herself down. She was a lady and she was going to act like one. No matter how big of a jerk the guy was. I mean, you're wrong. I'm from a specialized clan. We're masters of the mind. The mind is a weak place if the person is caught off guard. Ino gritted her teeth as Naruto continued to throw off insults. A person's mind is only as strong as the person itself. If he or she is weak in spirit, the mind will be easily crushed. Enough. The Yamanaka heir yelled out. He won her little game and he was just rubbing it in her face. You made your point. I will take you up on your offer, Naruto, but how will you find me? Naruto then chuckled at Ino's expense. Don't worry about that. Just leave it to me.
Do you hear that, Tsunade? Jiraiya asked, his head turning to locate the source of that ringing. Hear what? The goddamn Hawkage yelled from across the wing. I didn't hear any ringing. Wait, shush for a second. The Toad Sannin walked towards the small sound, the ringing originating from behind a destroyed bookshelf. With one move, Jiraiya tossed the bookshelf across the room, locating the source. What is this, Tsunade? Let me see. Jiraiya threw the object to Tsunade, who caught it with ease. Her eyes widened as she held it up to her eyes. Seeing his teammate lost in a trance-like state, Jiraiya got annoyed with being ignored. Well? He asked. It's the calling, Tsunade slowly answered. The calling? What is that? The calling of the cages. The Calling of the Cages. What a lame title. There were so many other better names out there you could have used. Jiraiya, Tsunade sharply said. I didn't name it, just sit down and you must never ever speak about the things I'm about to tell you to anybody.
Jiraiya merely nodded his head as he sat down, but not before noticing that his former teammate was acting very peculiar. He could actually count the number of times when Tsunade was actually serious on one hand. It took a lot for her to actually become serious, but when she did, it usually meant trouble. Her demeanor had also changed dramatically ever since he found that coin. But what was so special about that coin? Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he tried to analyze the silver object. When he touched it, it felt like a regular coin, but to have it emit a low-pitched sound took a Fuinjutsu master to do it. To go through all that trouble with one small coin is not an easy task. This story goes back to the time when the first 5 major villages were formed. The Shodai Kage of each village, as much as they hated each other, devised a method of contacting other Kage in time of dire trouble. The debate went on for days, discussing things about what the sign would be, and what kind of trouble was required in order for this to happen. In the end, they decided that the only ones who would know about this system were the Kage and their successors. The signal was a small ringing sound emitted from this very coin. That coin, Jiraiya snorted in disbelief. If you're pulling my leg here... This is the second time in history that it rang. The first time was when a powerful and ancient demon was unleashed into this world, threatening to destroy it. It took the combined powers of all the Kage to defeat it and return it back to the demonic plane. Sarutobi-sensei mentioned the story in the scroll that he left behind for me, the one locked inside of a secret safe. The 2 teammates sat there in the rubble of the destroyed room, staring at the coin. They could hear the quiet sounds of something ringing. What now? The Toad Sannin asked. We aren't exactly on the best of terms with other Kage. It doesn't matter, Tsunade responded. They know what must be done and we must all heed the call, no matter what. As long as you're sure, Tsunade, as long as you're sure. Where are we going? Ino asked for the umpteenth time. When she received nothing back, she gritted her teeth in frustration. What the hell, Naruto? I agreed to go with you, but not when you're leaving me in the dark. This is bullshit! She glared at her partner, giving him the coldest, darkest look she could muster, but after deciding that he was the strong silent type, she was at a loss. I give up. Ino sighed. Even Shino is a better conversationalist than you. And I care because. Ino's eyes lit up happily when she finally heard his voice for the first time in 2 hours. She didn't care if he just insulted her or threatened her, anything was better than walking in silence. You can talk. Naruto closed his mouth once more, wishing that he had kept silent. From the start of this trip, he knew he was in for something way over his head, but he just didn't know for what. The answer hit him like a ton of bricks when he was bombarded with non-stopped questions. I enjoy the silence. But come on, communication is the key to building a strong relationship. Does it look like I'm searching for a relationship? Aren't we becoming friends? I don't need friends. Just as Ino was about to respond, Naruto cut her off, knowing fair well what she was going to ask. No. But why? I thought we were your friends. That brought a chuckle from her traveling companion. Friends. Don't make me laugh. I bet you anything in this world that no one in the village saw me as a friend. A tool most likely, but a friend. Don't be ridiculous, Yamanaka. Naruto stopped walking and wrapped his cloak closer to him, as if he was trying to put his thought into words. I learned firsthand that friends are just as useless as fangirls. At first, they might seem useful and fun to have around, but when you really need them, they are nowhere to be found. Ino flinched at the way Naruto was talking, almost as if he was recalling some really painful memories. Naruto. Do not interrupt. I'm not done yet. The blonde dangerously said. Where was everyone when I was unfairly convicted? Where was everyone during my birthdays? Where the hell was everyone when I needed them the most? Naruto. Ino whispered. All the pain that he had cooped up inside of him, all the misery, all the sadness, it probably hurt more than a million sharp weapons piercing through one's body. She watched the cold, empty expression on his face as he clutched his hands, trying to keep his emotions in check. A faint bluish-red chakra outline surrounded him and she could feel the power emitted from it. I'm sorry, Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened as felt someone hug him from behind, a pair of petite arms wrapped around his torso. He felt himself calming down as he stood there, finally realizing what just happened. He turned around and found Ino's arms wrapped around him, tears leaking down her face. I'm sorry, Naruto heard her whisper out as she closed her eyes. Why are you sorry, Yamanaka? I never asked for your apology, nor do I ever want it.
Where do you think you're going, Tsunade-sama? Shizune asked. The woman stood at the entrance of the office, surprised to see her mentor packed and ready to take off. Jiraiya and I have to take a trip. I'm leaving you in charge, Shizune.
How can you be so irresponsible, Tsunade-sama? Leaving at a time like this. Konoha needs you right now. The council desperately needs to be reformed and the scroll disappeared. And that's the reason why I have to go, Shizune. You remember the coin, right? The look in her assistant's eyes was more than a yes. It proved that she clearly still remembered it. I'll be back in a couple of days. Try not to commit suicide before I get back. Shizune gritted her teeth as she watched her mentor and friend leap away into the night, leaving her to clean up this mess. You better come back alive. Tsunade-sama. Naruto continued traveling at a fast pace, stopping at regular intervals to check if there were anyone following him. Wrapped inside his cloak was one Ino Yamanaka, who was sleeping peacefully in his arms. During their last conversation, she had fallen asleep standing up and he couldn't just leave her there. Seeing as how he wanted to reach his destination in time, he opted to carry her in his arms. A lot of thoughts raced through his mind as he continued traveling west. The scroll was safely tucked in his pocket, but that troubled him greatly. He never saw this scroll before. It was different from the hidden village scroll that he had stolen when he was younger. This one was smaller and had some kind of power radiating off it. Just what are you planning, Pain? Naruto thought out loud. Don't think for a minute that I will be some expendable pawn in your little game. A loud thumping sound from the east caused Naruto to stop on the ground, hiding behind a tree as he tried to sense where the sound was coming from. With each passing second, the sound got louder and louder until he looked up, surprised to see a huge shadow leaping over him. Gamabunta.
The huge frog leaped over the area and continued west. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he watched it disappear into the horizon. I wonder where that oversized toad going in such a hurry. What was that, Naruto? Ino asked as she yawned. She blinked a couple of times as she looked up, surprised to see herself in his arms. Gamabunta, Naruto replied, his eyes still staring at the direction where the toad went. Jiraiya-sama's summon. Yeah, listen. We're going to speed up the pace a little. I want to know where Gamabunta is going in such a hurry. Can you shunshin well? Ino rolled her eyes. Imagine him asking her if she can perform such an easy technique. Of course I can.
Good, 'cause I'm not waiting. Without warning, Naruto took off like a bullet, leaving Ino amazed at the speed that her companion disappeared at. In a mere fraction of a second, Naruto was already out of her sight and she only sighed. It was a good thing she was well rested because if she wasn't, there was no way in hell she was going to catch him.
15 minutes later.
Slow down, Naruto, Ino desperately yelled. She barely caught up with the man and then he just disappeared once more. Feeling her chakra reserves giving out on her, she landed on the ground, heavily panting and sweat dripping down her face. It was no use, she couldn't catch him now. Geez, Yamanaka, why are you so useless? Shut up, Ino retorted as she caught her breath. She let out a small squeal when she felt a pair of strong arms picking her up. What do you think you're doing? Ino asked as she fidgeted around. Trying to not waste any more time.
Are you sure this is the right way, Tsunade? Jiraiya shouted over the wind. Yes. Jiraiya sighed as he stood on top of Gamabunta, his mind wandering all over the place. He couldn't help but wonder where this meeting of the cage took place, and why now. Did it have something to do with the scroll that was stolen from Konoha? He cursed himself for being so helpless at a time like this.
Aside from being a well-known author of the greatest novel series known to man, Jiraiya prided himself in being a scholar, an information expert. He would have information about anything: sealing, training, women. Those were just the tip of the iceberg, but the one thing that eluded him was ancient history. In all his years as a ninja, history was such a vast subject that no matter how far he traveled or how often he traveled, he couldn't grasp the surface of it. Sure, he knew the history concerning the major villages and their leaders, but anything before that were just random guesses. Do you even know where they're meeting? Nope, Tsunade answered. The Godime was sitting cross-legged, staring out into the horizon. She held the coin at the tip of her hands, watching it shine in the morning sun. So we're traveling blind.
Yup. Jiraiya, Gamabunta bellowed out. You told me you knew where we were going. The toad came to a halt, his eyes glaring straight at its summoner. Your promise of 75 bottles of sake has just been raised to 115 bottles. Consider that your punishment for lying to me. 115, Jiraiya shouted. That's unreasonable.
125. What? 135. Keep talking, you old pervert, and I'll keep raising it.
That instantly shut Jiraiya up. Knowing how much 135 bottles of sake would cost him, he silently wept to himself. Gamabunta, go left now, Tsunade yelled. The coin in her hand suddenly dropped to the left, indicating that they must travel towards the left.
The toad grunted and switched directions, now traveling in the left. Jiraiya sadly walked over, his shoulders slumped and mock tears were leaking out from his eyes. Why me? He whined. Shut up, Jiraiya, I'm trying to concentrate. Tsunade picked up the coin and held it once more at the tip of her hand. Jiraiya took this chance to further study the strange markings on the coin. On the center of it, there was some sort of circle with the kanji for fire in it. Just how does it work? Tsunade shrugged her shoulders. Beats me. If we're too far off course, it'll fall off my hand in the direction that we need to go. If we're on course, it'll stay on my hand. Strange, huh? More like interesting, Jiraiya commented. So what happens now? Who knows? This is the first time in over 100 years that this has happened. I guess whoever activated the coin will meet us at the location and tell us. I still don't like this one bit, Tsunade.
I don't like it either, but it must be done. This is the code that we Cage must follow and honor. We should have called in backup in case something happens.
Tsunade shook her head, disagreeing with the idea. This is a law set and agreed on by the first Cage. I refuse to be the one who breaks tradition. Besides, Sarutobi-sensei also wrote in the scroll that there is nothing to worry about. That caused Jiraiya to snort in disbelief. Yeah, and I'm sure Akatsuki will just surrender themselves. Believe what you want, but until I actually see betrayal, I'll keep an open mind.
Why are you going so fast? Ino shouted as she held on to Naruto for dear life. They were currently traveling faster than your normal Cage average speed, and that frightened her. She couldn't even see the trees anymore. Everything was just a blur to her. Gamabunta may not be the fastest runner of the toads, but he's no slouch when it comes to leaping. One leap and he can clear 600 meters easily. Why don't you just summon the fastest toad in your arsenal, and then we can do the same thing? I'm a missing nin, remember. The toad contract is only loyal to Konoha ninjas, and when they find out that I summoned them, they will have my head. Geez, don't they teach you anything in Konoha? Well, excuse me for not having a summoning contract. Ino huffed. She crossed her arms over her chest and closed her eyes. How much longer do we have before we catch up to them? I don't know when they're stopping. It might be minutes, hours, or even days.
Are you sure you can keep this up? Ino asked. There was always a limit to how much a human body can take, and if they go over the limit, their lifespan is considerably shortened. Even though Ino was an interrogation specialist, she still knew the human body inside out. While she may not be a medical ninja, she had the knowledge of one. Knowing how the human body tweaked and worked made her job more enjoyable. I'm not human, remember? Naruto coldly replied.
Noticing that she touched upon a sore spot, she decided to change the subject. So why did you join Akatsuki? She could feel his strong gaze upon her, and she looked away, feeling her cheeks blushing. We're talking about you here.
No particular reason. They were looking for muscle and I applied. He sarcastically answered. I got accepted when I wiped the floor with Itachi and destroyed a statue with my bare hands. Haha, funny, Ino said, rolling her eyes. Now seriously, why did you join up with them, Naruto? Aren't they the ones who wanted to capture you in the first place? That was then and this is now. Ino sighed. Fine, Naruto. It's fine if you don't want to tell me, but just don't lie to me. The blonde looked down for a split second and found her staring at him. You like something you see, he teasingly said. As if, I think Sasuke is so much better looking. Then why don't you ask your precious Sasuke to carry you? Naruto lightly tossed her into the air, earning him a loud scream. Ino. He chuckled as he sped up, catching her in his arms before she fell. Did your Sasuke-chan not get you, Yamanaka? I thought he would have showed up and saved you from a certain doom. Not funny, Ino sternly replied as she dug her nails into Naruto's skin. Fast healing. You won't hurt me.
Darn. She had forgotten about the abilities that Naruto had. Ultra fast healing, and the ability to survive fatal blows that would kill a normal man. In a sense, Naruto was like a superhuman, the kind that any military would eagerly want in their ranks. With just Naruto on their side, they would be unstoppable, and if they were able to have him breed children with other bloodlines.
The thought just amazed her. There were just so many different scenarios that concerned Naruto, but all of them ended up with him being used and manipulated. Maybe leaving Konoha was the best thing that could have happened to him.
Say, Naruto, what did you mean by you'll take of everything when we were leaving Konoha? Let's just say, you won't be returning anytime soon. Shizune-sama, we just found the body of one Ino Yamanaka. Upon hearing the news, Shizune spat out the tea that she was sipping before a Junin barged in with the bad news. What the hell do you mean? We were out surveying the area like you requested, and suddenly, we found her body among the rumble, her throat slashed like the rest. No, 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 Shizune repeated to herself. Get her to the hospital for examination.
Hi, the Junin responded as he disappeared in a swirl of leaves.
It wasn't supposed to go down like this. She wasn't supposed to die. Shizune paced around the room, panicking at every step. What do I do now? What do I do? Damn this job, I was better off being an assistant. You what? Ino screamed. She punched Naruto hard on the shoulder. How could you? She continued hitting Naruto, not letting up for a second. Why would you even consider that? Have you even thought that maybe, just maybe, that one day I would like to go back? That's right, you didn't think. But what? You left behind a dead corpse. All my friends will think that I actually died. Imagine the surprise when they find out that I'm not dead. At least you're not dead. Ah! Ino screamed. She clutched her hands tightly and glared at Naruto, imagining that her hands were around that neck of his right, squeezing it slowly and painfully. Why couldn't you have done something less subtle?
That's not my style. I swear, Naruto, the first thing I'm going to do when I get off is to strangle you. I will literally strangle you until you turn blue. Knowing that Ino would pretty much carry out that threat, Naruto started calculating a backup plan in the back of his mind. He had so much to do before he died. So much to accomplish. Yeah, kill me later. Hang on, I'm taking it up another notch. Ino's eyes widened at his statement. Another notch? You're not tired? Nah, I'm not going all out. As soon as he said that, the speed picked up once again and Ino just closed her eyes. She was feeling a bit sick and it wouldn't do her any good if she barfed on herself.
Pain. It's almost time. A woman's voice spoke up. They're nearly here. Yes, I know. I can feel them approaching. I'm not sure we should trust that Uzumaki just yet. I cannot read his thoughts clearly. You worry too much, Conan. It will be just fine. Are you sure you want to continue with this?
Pain nodded his head. It is required for the salvation of this world, Conan. Nagato would have wanted this. Upon hearing the name, Conan's expression saddened slightly, but it soon returned to normal. I shall make the appropriate preparations then.
We're here, Jiraiya? Tsunade suddenly said. The coin that she was holding on to had stopped guiding her. Stop, Gamabunta, Jiraiya shouted. The toad came to a halt as they looked around. Looks like a wasteland. Are you sure you got the right place?
We finally agree on something, you pervert. Looks like I'm done here. Remember what you owe me, Jiraiya. Gamabunta wrapped his tongue around Jiraiya and squeezed hard. I got it, Jiraiya quickly said. Tsunade jumped off Gamabunta's back and landed on the floor while Jiraiya fell straight down when the boss disappeared. The Godime looked around, searching for some sort of meeting place, but she found nothing. Nothing but empty barren wastelands in every direction. Looks like crap, Jiraiya muttered as he dusted himself off. All that traveling and 135 bottles of sake for this. It was definitely not worth it. He could have been at the hot springs in Konoha, working on his new books. Looks like you made it, a voice spoke up from behind them. The two Konoha ninjas jumped backwards and assumed a defensive position. Whoa, easy there, Godime Hokage of Konoha. The person appeared from the ground, holding his hands up in the air. It's been a long time, Jiraiya. Himura, Jiraiya slowly greeted in return.
Why did you stop Naruto? Ino suddenly asked. Naruto's hand quickly covered her mouth, stopping her from answering any more questions. Shh, she heard him respond. Naruto stood at a distance, standing in a crater that Gamabunta had created before he disappeared. He didn't want to get too close and risk being discovered. He watched as his former sensei Hokage stood there talking with a strange man. Just what were they up to in the middle of a wasteland?
What's going on, Naruto? Ino quietly asked. She released herself from Naruto's arm and crouched up next to him. As that, Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama.
Yeah.
The next thing they saw had their eyes widened in surprise. 1 minute the group was just standing outside and the next, they vanished into thin air. Naruto scanned the area, searching for any traces of chakra but was surprised when he found nothing.
Kage Bunshin suddenly appeared next to him, surprising Ino a bit.
You can do that without any seals? Ino asked, amazed. To be able to perform a technique without any hand seals show that a person has truly mastered the technique. Go, Naruto whispered. The clone walked over to the area, slowly searching around for any traces of human contact. Just as the clone was about to give up, his hand slipped through an invisible barrier. Everyone's eyes widened at the sudden discovery. Go back to base and give the scroll to the leader. Stay there for the duration until you find a perfect chance to dismiss yourself. Naruto commanded. Right, the clone answered before taking off. Naruto, what's going on here? I don't know, Yamanaka, I don't know.
Welcome to the Chateau de Versailles, Himura said, introducing the newcomers to the area. This is a holy place where the Kage gather in time of need. You must never speak of its location or what you see and hear to anyone. Do I make myself clear? Tsunade and Jiraiya both nodded. Amazing, Tsunade commented as she stared in amazement. The Chateau de Versailles was actually a palace, built with silver and lined with gemstones on the walls. It was truly a magnificent place to witness.
Jiraiya, on the other hand, was hyperventilating from the place. He could smell the rich aura, the amount of gold that was stored in this place. It was just overwhelming. Maybe he could sneak a few back later for his own personal use. Tsunade, we must enter the chamber. We do not have time to spare. Himura started walking, opening the grand doors to the palace. Everyone is waiting. Let's go, Jiraiya. We came here for a reason. The Sanins walked into the place together, each wondering what this meeting is about. For all they know, it could be about the fate of the world.
When Himura pushed the doors open and allowed his guests to enter the sacred building, it came as no surprise that they were shocked. Seeing such an amazing infrastructure up close would shock anyone. He secretly smiled to himself. It never got old seeing the looks of surprise on their faces. Tsunade? Gasped as she entered the room. Is it just me? Or do the rooms keep getting fancier and fancier as we go in?
Jiraiya nodded his head. Holy shit. There are more jewels and gold in here than we have in Konoha combined. If you could please come this way, I will show you to the inner chamber. Himura said, walking briskly in front of them. As much as he wanted to show off the rest of the building, there were other important matters to attend to. As Himura led the way in, Jiraiya glanced over at Tsunade, making sure that she was all right. He noticed that her left hand was slightly shaking but waved it off as being nervous. I can't blame her, Jiraiya thought. As he looked at Tsunade, he missed seeing Himura stopping and bumped into the man. Sorry. It is quite all right, Himura replied as he opened the grand doors to the inner chamber. Inside the room sat the most prominent political figures in the entire nation, the Kages of each major village. Please have a seat, we will begin momentarily, Himura politely said, making his way across the room. Tsunade nodded her head and took her place next to Gaara, or what looked like to be him. She couldn't really tell with all the bruises and bandages on his face. Gaara, is that you? Gaara grunted a response and nodded his head. Yes, it is me. What the hell happened to you? It looks like someone mauled you in a fight.
Akatsuki happened, another voice said, answering for Gaara. Tsunade turned her head and instantly recognized the person. Hidekatsu, damn. Look at you. You're worse than Gaara, Jiraiya exclaimed, interrupting Tsunade. Damn, that Akatsuki member must have done a number on you. Shibata chuckled weakly as he leaned back into his chair. Let's just say that the element of surprise was on their side. Enough. We have more pressing issues at hand than to talk about their shameful defeats, answered Aoi Kimberta the Raikage. Indeed. Himura stood up so everyone could see him. Before we begin, let us start off with an introduction. Please introduce yourself as we go around the room. He turned to Aoi, who was sitting on his left-hand side.
The Raikage looked annoyed by the man's request but stood up anyway. I am Aoi Kimberta, the Yondaime Raikage. When he sat down, Himura motioned for the next one to stand up. Greetings, I am Shiro Yamato, the Sandaime Mizukage.
Shibata raised his hand as Shiro sat down. Is it okay if I just introduce myself sitting down? I have trouble getting up. Himura nodded his head. Go right ahead. We are among friends here.
I am Shibata Hidekatsu, the Yondaime Tsuchikage.
Gaara rolled his eyes as he stood up. He was never one for these petty icebreaker games, even during his genin days. They were such an annoyance. I am Sabaku. No Gaara, the Godame Kazekage. He sat down after his quick introduction, motioning for Tsunade to go.
Tsunade stood up but not before locking eyes with the Raikage. It was no surprise that he was glaring at her as well. It brought a huge smirk to her face as a scowl appeared on his. I am Tsunade, the Godime Hokage. All eyes went back to Himura as everyone finished introducing themselves. They were wondering just who this man was. I am Sojiro Himura, the 27th guardian of this sacred place, and I am the one who summoned you. Why have you summoned us, guardian? We are not at your disposal. We do not answer to some stranger. We have countries to run and soldiers to command. I know that Kimberta-san, but you are in the inner chamber, a place where everyone is neutral. You will be respectful towards everyone. I will not tolerate anything less. Do I make myself clear? The tone that Himura replied back with caused the Raikage and everyone else to think twice about the man. At first glance, one would think that the man was fragile and weak, but underneath that exterior, there was a level of mystery and power that none of them could begin to comprehend. Crystal, a reluctant answer was all Aoi could manage. Himura then turned his attention back to the group. Now that the introductions are out of the way, let us get straight to business. The guardian sat down and folded his hands, a stoic expression on his face. Where are the original scrolls that your predecessors have vowed to keep safe from all harm? The question came as a surprise to everyone, and naturally, it caught everyone off guard. Well, I'm waiting. Gone, Shiro finally answered, taken by Akatsuki.
Himura sighed. What has become of the famed artifact, Heart of the Waterfall? Again, the room was filled with silence. No one knew how to answer the guardian. Tsunade sighed as she answered, Gone as well. So let me get this straight, the guardian said, his gaze fixated on the cage. You're telling me that the organization called Akatsuki has both the scrolls and the artifact? The cage each nodded their head. They took us by surprise. We weren't expecting them to be the one collecting the scrolls. Then, the day that we have feared has finally come, Himura said with a hint of urgency in his voice. What are you talking about, Himura-san? What is so important about those scrolls? Shiro asked. I do not seem to recall reading about them in any book or scrolls. Himura-san. Before Shiro took on the title of the Mizukage, he was a man of knowledge. He preferred brains to brawn and valued the power of knowledge over brute strength. His unusual method caused him to have workers build a huge library directly underneath his office, one big enough to satisfy his addiction to knowledge.
That is because this is something that goes way beyond the normal scope. This is something that should never be mentioned anywhere. The information is so highly classified that it must only be committed to memory. Writing it down puts everything we stand for in jeopardy. That is absurd. What is so bloody important about these scrolls? Aoi loudly retorted, standing up from his seat. Stop leaving us in the dark and tell us already. Kimberta-san, I will not warn you again. If there is more one rude outburst from you, I cannot be held responsible for my actions. Himura coldly said, now sit down and shut up. I do not have time to deal with your petty issues. Everyone in the room felt the cold killing intent that leaked out from Himura, but they didn't feel the force behind it. Aoi was the unlucky victim to be the recipient for it. They didn't need to experience it to know how powerful it was. Just by looking at Aoi trembling told them everything they need to know. The Raikage had a reputation of ruling his village with an iron fist, and to see the man shaking from Himura spoke 1,000 words. The contents of the scrolls themselves are not important. It doesn't matter if any organization possesses them, but when all the scrolls are combined with the artifact, it produces a unique map. A map? A map to what? Tsunade asked. Not what, who? Himura answered. It is not a treasure map that leads to untold riches. The map leads to something even greater. Something greater than treasure. Jiraiya spoke up, his body leaning forward. He moved his chair slightly to the left of Tsunade, so Himura could see his face. What is greater than riches? The body of the Raikudo Sennin. Bah! Mythological folktales. Nothing more but a bedtime story. Everyone knows that the body of the Raikudo Sennin was destroyed when he died. Jiraiya-san. Himura turned his attention to the Toad Sannin. Let me assure you, I am neither a humorous person nor do I like to make up fabricated stories for my own amusement. Jiraiya said as he shrank back into his chair, knowing that he had just been given a warning. He didn't want to feel what Aoi felt. Just remembering it brought chills down his back. To answer your question, the legend about the Raikudo Sennin is indeed false. We only created that story to keep people from finding out the truth. If they knew the truth, the peaceful era that we live in today would have been replaced by a war-ridden battlefield. The truth is, the body of the Raikudo Sennin was never destroyed. Upon hearing the news, Jiraiya choked out loud. Are you insane? If what you're telling us is true, then that's insane. The body of the Raikudo Sennin is too valuable to be left lying around like that. What the hell were you guys thinking? Himura shot Jiraiya a cold, intense glare, letting him know that he was already on his second warning. You don't think we tried? We knew about the dangers and we tried everything to prevent it, from using fire to freezing the body in absolute zero, but nothing worked. The Sennin was able to somehow preserve his own body, and because of that, this organization was formed to protect it, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The first Cage knew about it and swore to protect it from evil. So what does that mean now? Gaara said, speaking up for the first time. Since the beginning of the meeting, he had been silent, talking only when he thought it was necessary. Since Akatsuki has the items, what does that mean for us as a whole? Himura sadly smiled. I fear that the worst has come, my Cage. The map has finally been gathered and Judgment Day has finally come. When Himura opened the doors, expecting to have his final 2 guests arrive, what the Guardian didn't notice was that there were 2 extra. Naruto silently evaded detection by casting a double genjutsu over himself and Ino. Normally it wouldn't have been able to hide their chakra signature, but when combined with a certain technique, it would make everything seem invisible. As they silently walked through the hallway, he stayed a few feet behind them. Any sudden movement could dispel his genjutsu. When they reached the inner chamber, Naruto quickly put his arm around Ino and they jumped towards the ceiling. He noticed that the Guardian's eyes were shifting around, almost as if he could see right through the genjutsu. Naruto held his breath when he saw Himura stare right at him, but the moment passed when the Guardian sat down. Why are we here, Naruto? Ino asked.
Aren't you a bit curious as to why Tsunade and Iro Sennin came to this ultra-secret place? Naruto replied. He saw Ino nodding her head, and his eyes switched from hers to the other Cage. There must be a reason why all the Cage are gathered here in this one place, and I'm willing to bet that whatever reason they're here for has to do something with those scrolls. Now shut up. It's starting.
Ino felt a bit hesitant spying on the meeting. If it were under normal circumstances, she wouldn't mind it, but these people were Cage-level ninjas, for crying out loud. People who were deemed the strongest. If they were spotted, she wasn't even sure Naruto could take them on and come out unscathed. Naruto leaned a little bit to the left, his body adjusting itself so he could get comfortable. There was something about this situation that was making him a bit uneasy. He, too, had heard the bedtime story of the Raikudo Sennin when he was still a genin. The story, as well as he can remember it, describes the legendary tales of the hermit and his journey to achieve the ultimate power to bring peace to humanity. It ended with the Sennin achieving nirvana and spreading his knowledge to the great nations. It came as a shock when he found out that the very bedtime story that he grew up with was indeed false. The very man that kids idolized was a false image. Something was wrong here.
Something very wrong.
As Naruto looked on, waiting patiently for the Guardian to continue the conversation, he went over the information once again. Something didn't add up here. I fear that whoever possesses the map will control the will of the Sennin. Himura sadly answered. Is it because of some kind of powerful bloodline that the Sennin has? Gaara said, remembering a certain battle between with Sasori of Akatsuki, the puppet master. It was said that even in death, the Cage's bloodline was still as powerful as when he was alive. No, my young Cage. He who controls the Sennin will control the world. The Guardian replied. Whoa, whoa, Tsunade said, holding her hands up in the air. Now wait a darn minute. The Sennin may have been a powerful man, but he was also a good man. He would never think about destroying the world. I see that some of you still don't believe me. The Raikudo Sennin was indeed one of the greatest people to ever walk this planet, giving birth to the ninjutsu that you now know, but aside from that, he was also evil. What you did not know was that the man was corrupted with power, filled with evil in his heart. He saw the ways that humanity was taking root and decided to change it with the powers he achieved. Many have gone against him and many have died, but a selected few came together and defeated the Sennin in battle. The man swore that one day, he will come back, and when he does, he will have his revenge. That is why we don't speak about the man, so he could disappear. To be forgotten. But you failed, Gaara guessed. At some point in time, his name resurfaced, and now, Akatsuki is trying to claim his body for their own purpose. Exactly, and if they find the Sennin before we do, we would have a disaster of epic proportions on our hands. Should we prepare our armies for war? Aoi asked, a devious smirk beginning to appear on his face. If it was about quantity of able soldiers, there was none better than his army. The Guardian shook his head. It doesn't matter how many men you send, once they have the Sennin under their control, they would just be slaughtered. You make him sound like the man's coming back from the dead. Jiraiya spoke up. That's not possible unless you're Orochimaru. But how alive are we in reality? Does one need to speak and think to be fully alive? No, my friend. He is alive as any living thing. The difference between him and us is that we have a soul. So how are they going to control the Sennin? I'm sure the man took precautionary measures to prevent something like that. By performing a blood ritual that requires a living sacrifice.
Did you hear that, Naruto? Ino asked. They're reviving a dead man. And you're working for something like that? Is that what you really wanted? To be a part of something that brings the world to its knees?
Naruto remained silent, deep in thought. By the time he answered, he saw Ino staring at him intently. I will make Konoha pay, and if I must be a part of Pain's plan, then so be it. What if you're the one they sacrifice? The question caught Naruto off guard. He never thought about it from that angle. The more he thought about it, the more his eyes lit up in fury. He chuckled to himself, shaking his head. Pain, you bastard. With this new information, it was now safe to assume that Pain was going to need a sacrifice to resurrect the fallen Sennin. Naruto quickly made a mental checklist of every Akatsuki member in his head, crossing them off one by their rank of importance to the man. Hidan and Kakuzu were known as the immortal duo. They were too valuable to be killed, not that they could be killed. Pain wouldn't let those pawns escape his sight, not even for a second. Next on that list were Tobi and Zetsu. These two were the spies of the group and they hold unique skills that Pain required, so they can be crossed off that list as well. Last on that list was Itachi, and he was in a unique position. The man had the Mangekyo Sharingan and valuable knowledge as well. After going through that very short list, it was basically narrowed down to him and Deidara, but knowing his luck, it would certainly be him. Naruto clutched his knuckles tightly as the thought stuck in his mind. It wasn't going to be him. He would be damned if it was him, and he was going to make sure it wasn't. You're a devious man, Pain, but too bad I'm onto you. I will not be used as bait in your little game. Never again will I be used like a measly pawn. We'll see how far you go, Naruto whispered to himself. He turned his head slightly and looked at Ino, who was still listening intently to the discussion. Yamanaka, Naruto whispered into her ear, I changed my mind. You're not coming with me anymore. How do we stop them then? They have the map. They have a head start. An advantage, Tsunade asked.
Do not fret, my friends. Did you think I would be unprepared? We have the map sealed inside a scroll for emergency purposes like this, but it would take some time to unseal it. Then we should get a move on.
No, we should bide our time wisely. Shibata said. We are dealing with something beyond our understanding. If we make a mistake, it can otherwise prove fatal.
Weak argument coming from someone who got their ass kicked. I say we gather our forces and launch an attack on Akatsuki immediately. Aoi argued. No, you naive fool, the Guardian harshly said. We cannot move until they do. Only those with the actual map can locate the key to opening the gate. Tsunade sighed. So we wait and send in our best warriors.
Himura shook his head. No, we send in the best of the best. The Raikudo Sennin was one of the greatest warriors to ever walk this planet. He can probably take all of us on and still win. We need to plan carefully. This is something that we cannot afford to lose.
What do you suggest then, Guardian? Aoi asked. Should we sit here and twiddle our thumbs? Himura snorted as he got up from his seat. While I'm performing the unsealing ritual, you will head back to your respective villages and select your strongest warriors. Let them know of the dangers that they will face, and when the time is right, I will summon all of you again. The cage got up and bowed their head in respect before leaving for home. Tsunade pulled Jiraiya to one side once they left the main room. I want him back now, she said, keeping her voice down to a minimum.
Who? Jiraiya asked, confused about her question. Who else do you think stands a chance? He was the strongest in our village and still is. I want him back. I want Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya choked on the news. Are you insane? Do you not remember what the boy did in Konoha? I'm not going to risk my neck for a village who won't appreciate it. Tsunade sighed. I remember what happened, but surely he can understand that the fate of the world is riding on this plan.
Look, let's just go back to Konoha and think about this carefully. You're tired. I'm tired. Everyone's tired right now. Putting one arm over her shoulder, Jiraiya led his emotionally drained friend back to Konoha.
Well, what now? Ino quietly asked. The cage had already left the room, but it was still risky to move right now. They could still be outside discussing the events, and if they were caught, things could become very complicated.
We have to leave quietly, and then you're going back to Konoha, Naruto answered as he skillfully moved across the ceiling. It wasn't hard considering that he was a ninja, but to move with another person took a little bit more time. Why? Ino replied, almost shouting. After coming all this way and listening to all that, she wasn't going to quit now. Lives were at stake, and there was this feeling deep inside of her, telling her not to go back home. Because it's not safe anymore. Have you forgotten about the fake corpse of me you left behind?
Of course he remembered. She didn't need to remind him. He was the one who planned it anyway. By combining a simple henge on a dead Chunin, it was relatively simple.
The henge would have worn off by now. Go back home to your family. I can't go back there. Naruto didn't need to turn around to notice her sudden outburst. It doesn't take an expert to figure out that he just hit a painful spot. What happened, Yamanaka? There's something you're not telling me, and I don't like being kept in the dark. I can't go back to Konoha?
You don't have a choice. Naruto answered. From this point on, the trip is going to be way too dangerous for you. I cannot waste my time looking out for you.
You don't understand. What's there to understand? Go back home to your family, Naruto harshly said. What was so hard to understand here? He had given her the option to run back home, to a place where she would be safe. Any sane person would have taken him up on that offer. Ino mumbled something incoherent that Naruto didn't quite understand. What did you say? My parents aren't around anymore. They passed away a few months ago. That stopped Naruto in his tracks. He vaguely remembered Ino's parents before his exile. They might not have liked him, but they didn't resent him for being the demon. They were just protective over their one and only daughter. What happened?
Ino bit her lips as she fought hard to hold the tears back. Memories of that day were still fresh in her mind.
Flashback. Miss Yamanaka. Yes, Ino answered, looking up from the flower shop. She dusted off her hands and looked at her visitor. What can I do for you? Hokage-sama requests your presence in her office immediately.
It was just like any other day, a messenger coming into the shop and dropping off missions for Ino, but little did she know that today was different.
The blonde rushed to the tower, sensing that something was off today. She had this feeling in her gut, telling her that something was wrong. Her hands trembled when she pushed the doors open. When she walked in, she saw Tsunade sitting there with a serious expression on. I'm sorry, Ino. That did nothing to help her growing anxiety. Her fears were gnawing at her heart as she desperately asked, What are you talking about, Hokage-sama? Your parents, they died bravely on the battlefield.
She knew that this was going to happen but could not believe that it would be this soon. She couldn't believe it. She didn't want to believe it. Her tears were starting to cloud her vision and everything was becoming blurry.
How?
It was supposed to be a simple C-rank mission to return something to Suna, but somewhere along the way, they were ambushed by a group of renegade ninjas. They fought against the enemy with everything they had, but in the end, they were tortured and killed. I'm so sorry, Ino. Ino became speechless, shocked at the news. No.
No.
Tsunade pulled Ino into a much-needed hug. She knew all too well the feeling of this pain. She herself had experienced it in the past once too many. They were the bravest people I have ever known. But rest assured, Ino, I will hunt down those people responsible. You have my word as Hokage, Ino.
Flashback end.
Yamanaka. Naruto started to speak up. I don't understand, Ino said, tears continuing to fall down her face. How could something happen to them? They were the nicest people you could ever meet.
There was nothing Naruto could say that would make the pain go away. He knew the feeling all too well, Yamanaka. I just wished I said goodbye to them. Sighing quietly, Naruto turned around and saw tears falling down her face. He walked up to her, and the next thing he did surprised them both. In one swift motion, he pulled her into a tight embrace. Shh, it's going to be okay. The simplicity of the hug spoke volumes of words. She didn't need to say anything else as she silently cried on Naruto's shoulder. Hold on, we're leaving this place.
Ino could only nod her head, unable to find her voice.
Because before she knew it, they were already gone from the place.